Each of the 7 elements in Genshin Impact have their own distinct interactions and properties, which lay down the foundation for the essential experience of the game's combat. The characters are then given an individual element to their name in the form of a vision, and all their powers are tied to the creation or manipulation of said element. Currently, the only one that has not yet fielded a playable unit is Dendro, leaving us with 6 functional elements: Pyro, Hydro, Anemo, Electro, Cryo, and Geo, or in layman's terms, Fire, Water, Wind, Lightning, Ice, and Earth. True to their archetypes, each element represents a facet of the game's combat. Pyro places great emphasis on offense, with its reactions all coming in the form of increased damage. Its characters are known for their aggression in battle and wide area coverage. Hydro's fluidity allows it to adapt to a wide variety of situations, from increased damage to crowd control, and many of its characters have healing properties within their kits. Much like how Wind works in other games and, real life, Anemo is all about spread, assimilating whatever element is within reach and throwing it around everywhere. Same goes to the characters who have very large area coverage and displacement tools. Cryo shares a lot of the same attributes as Hydro, being frozen water and all, and like Ice in other games, there's a theme of inhibiting enemy movements. Fittingly, Cryo has 2 of its reactions benefiting those with physical attacks. As I'm sure you all know, the colder something is, the more brittle it is. Geo is the element of substance, the most defensive and solid element of the 7. Its one reaction is predicated on protecting allies, and Geo characters are all known for manifesting tangible constructs that can change the terrain of the battlefield in their favor. This leaves us with just one element left, Electro, and the way Genshin represents it is rather odd to say the least. The consensus around Electro as an element is that it's one of the weaker ones out there, if not the weakest. There's been discussion over the effectiveness of Electro characters being reduced by the lack of decent elemental reactions outside of very select use cases like Eula with Superconduct, but Eula's not Electro. And as of right now, almost every Electro unit is rated much lower in value than similar units bearing different elements, with the only one ranked at the top being the almighty Shogun herself. Yet even though she's supposed to be the paragon of her element, her incredible power stems almost entirely from her own merits as a character and from virtually no backing by Electro itself. For those of you who are new to my channel, my favorite character of all time is Keqing. She was my first ever 5-star when I first started out, and the only 5-star I have Constellation 6 on. I love her design, the way her attacks string together, and even her workaholic personality, since I myself am a workaholic for better or worse. But my bias towards her doesn't blind me from the fact that performatively, she's one of the weaker 5-stars in Genshin, a lot of that being the result of Electro not doing anything for her, and by extension, the rest of the cast. I thought about it for a while and was like, you know what, let's dive into some theory crafting and figure out what we can do to improve Electro as an element. I don't necessarily think we should make it a carbon copy of Pyro where all its reactions just do crazy damage, since from a design standpoint, redundancy should be avoided as much as humanly possible, especially in class-based games. And it also gives me an excuse to make a non-Why No One Plays video because I don't want to upload 3 episodes back to back, just so you don't get bored. But yeah, let's begin. Unlike other conventional elements, there's no clear way for how lightning is portrayed in video games. Despite being part of the holy trinity of fire, ice, and lightning that you see very often, the actual physical properties of lightning aren't established that much. So, what I think we should do first is see how it's done in popular titles with an element system. For example, the way Pokemon likes to demonstrate this through electric type is centered around speed and power. The vast majority of electric types are known to hit you hard and or fast. There's one category of Pokemon with incredibly high speed stats, almost guaranteeing they'll be the fastest one on your team. The other category consists of electric Pokemon who spec all their points into power, specifically special attack. As for their type's innate properties, many electric moves have the potential to paralyze their opponent, greatly reducing their speed and having the chance to fully stagger them for that turn, preventing them from doing anything. The electric type is one of the most popular for both casual and competitive players due to excelling at both offensive fields, speed and power, while having surprisingly great debuffing capabilities. Thematically, its super effective damage against flying and water makes a lot of sense. Water conducts electricity, and lightning strikes have probably killed a lot of birds. Diablo 2 has 3 elements, fire, cold, and lightning, cold obviously being ice. Fire deals the most consistent damage, ice is known for its incapacitating properties, and lightning potentially has the highest damage, but also potentially the lowest, once again making sense as lightning is very volatile, it's erratic, but extremely deadly. Fire Emblem is another franchise with a pronounced lightning element. In a lot of titles, there are 3 types of anima magic, fire, wind, and lightning, with ice tomes belonging to wind magic to maintain the trinity. Fire magic has great power, wind magic has the highest accuracy, and lightning has moderate power and low accuracy but a high crit rate. So just like in Diablo 2, it can potentially inflict devastating amounts of pain or completely whiff. So trying to figure out what lightning represents from a thematic standpoint, I compared it to fire. Both are destructive and hard to contain or control. Fire can easily spread and cover a large area which burns everything in its path, while lightning is precise and concentrated, focusing a large amount of energy into a single point. Genshin's already taken care of one side of the equation. The Pyro element is well known for being the keystone offensive element. Vaporize and Melt are the strongest reactions in the game based on pure damage, and most Pyro units are known for their wide area coverage. All things considered, Pyro was designed pretty well. Electro is supposed to be the other offensive element, but what causes it to be vastly overshadowed by Pyro are two problems. Firstly, Electro doesn't have anything particularly special about it that you can't accomplish through other means. Even if we were to acknowledge the importance of superconduct on physical attackers, that represents an infinitesimal portion of the cast, and elemental reactions are supposed to account for everyone within that element in some way, shape, or form. Overloaded is merely a burst of Pyro damage that doesn't scale in any way. Electrocharged is electro damage over time, which by the way should really be renamed to Electrocute, but that's a nitpick on my part. Electro-infused Swirl can do that just as easily since Venti, Kazuha, and Sucrose's ultimates are damage over time in a wide area. This means the only thing Electro has to its name that's unique and valuable is useful to only about 5 to 10% of the entire roster. Secondly, beyond reactions, Electro doesn't specialize in anything among its characters as well, at the moment anyway. If you remember at the beginning when I went through each element, I talked about how they have a playstyle or function that may not be exclusive only to them, but is definitely prevalent within their rosters. Hydro has a lot of healers, Anemo has a lot of crowd control, Geo has terrain manipulation, Cryo slows down attack and movement speed, Pyro is widespread damage. Electro doesn't really have anything amongst his characters. Beidou is the counterpunch attacker, Sada and Fischl are backline utility while Razor and Kuxing are rushdown attackers, and lastly Electro Traveler and Shogun are energy-based users. There needs to be some semblance of uniformity through Electro's characters, and right now there isn't one. Having said all that, I spent a good deal of time looking at what we have to work with, the design constraints imposed on Genshin and the philosophy MiHoYo had when approaching each character. Based on how other games have tried different approaches for the element of lightning, there are about 3 different avenues for reworking or fixing Electro, so let's go through each one of them at a time. Option 1 is probably my favorite. If Pyro is meant to be the straightforward damage element, Electro should be the breaker element. We don't really have a dedicated debuffer element in the game, only spread across a few characters or the Anemo artifact set. So, instead of increasing your attack power the way Hu Tao, Bennett, and Xiangling do, we should give Electro and his characters a way to break through enemy defenses. This is already present in a couple Electro units. Razor's Constellation 4 reduces enemy defense by 15% for 7 seconds, and Beidou's Constellation 6 reduces enemy Electro res by 15% while Stormbreaker is active. It can either be done through their passive and active talents or through elemental reactions. As we know, Superconduct breaks enemy resistance to physical attacks by 40%. And to my knowledge, at some point during the beta version, it was originally going to reduce flat defense, so it would apply to all elements and attacks, not just physical. There's also the option for Electro to break through shields faster than other elements. I'm not talking about actual shields those big hill trolls carry, rather the elemental shields that you see on those Abyss Mages, Lectors, Heralds, the Fatui agents, or the Pyrohypostasis. Technically, they already have shield weaknesses in the form of your respective elements, but if Overload Explosion, for instance, dealt bonus damage to shields regardless of the element, that could increase the viability of Electro in areas where there's a lot of enemies with shields. One other possibility would be to have Electro play off the paralysis debuff from Pokemon. Electro Charge deals damage over time, with every tick also causing you to flinch. Thing is, this only really works against the player, not so much the enemies. If there was a way you can consistently stagger enemies or hypothetically bosses, Electro would be a fantastic element for sub-DPS units, which currently comprises more than half of the available characters. Option number 2 is to double down on the speed aspect of lightning. While Pyro characters prefer to destroy clusters of enemies with one powerful shot, Electro units are more in tune with rapid attacks in quick succession. Not saying there aren't one-hit burst attacks, Shogun's ultimate hits like a truck, but if we want to create a second DPS element without completely emulating Pyro, the only choice other than power is speed. Kuxing's popularity is a result of her fluidity. Her attack animations, skill, and burst feature very rapid strikes. In the early months of Genshin's release, Razor's cult following was founded on his ramping attack speed the longer he stayed in combat. Fischl has a physical DPS build affectionately coined Machine Gun Fischl because of the mountain of on-hit effects tied to her kit. Even Shogun's elemental skill grants her party proc-based electro damage, and when she draws her Booba sword, she attacks in a rapid flurry of hits just like Kuxing. Taking a page out of Razor's book, Electro's passive element could come in the form of increased attack speed, movement speed, and/or decreased stamina cost, as in every application of Electro raises your attack speed by 3% up to a cap of 30. Elemental reactions can increase your movement speed and reduce stamina cost, so you can use charge attacks and sprint around much more frequently. Will this mean Electro characters are on par with Pyro? Not necessarily. However, if this were to happen, you can't compare the two anymore. Electro will be consistent DPS while Pyro will be burst oriented. Depending on who you're up against, you might need one character with high solo uptime, or you need a tactical nuke. It opens up the door for personal preference. Option 3 is my least favorite compared to the previous two, as it's the least creative, but it's still worth explaining. Lightning Magic in Fire Emblem has a high crit rate, which means it can potentially deal more damage than Fire since it's concentrated at a single point. If Pyro covers a large area, Electro should focus on one enemy. So here's what we can do. All 3 Electro elements have the potential to deal AoE damage, but we can add a condition to where if you proc Overload, Electrocharge, or Superconduct on a single enemy, any damage within 1 second of the reaction will be converted to true damage. True damage is a term from League of Legends used to describe any damage that completely ignores damage reduction, defense, and resistances. I say 1 second to account for Electro units with multi-hits. And for added measure, we can have it bypass shields if the target has one up. Shogun's Constellation 2 has their elemental burst and subsequent attacks do partial true damage already, ignoring 60% of the target's defense. If in the foreseeable future Genshin releases bosses with very high base defense, Electro would be more effective in those situations. Of course, balance will require further testing, maybe ignoring 100% of the enemy defense is too much and it should only be half, but all of this is conceptual and conjecture anyway, so we don't need to get into the details too much. When I first started playing Genshin, my favorite element was Electro because the insignia looked really cool and intimidating with its razor edges contrasting from the more mellow aesthetic of even Pyro. That and Kotun was my first 5-star. I believe there's a lot of potential for Electro to be a really powerful element while being unique, and not a one-to-one replica of Pyro. A while ago, MiHoYo did release a statement, I think around version 1.6 when the summer event was teased, that they were gonna buff Electro, but I don't think those changes were ever implemented. Though if the possibility still exists, I don't think it would be wise to change elemental reactions to deal multiplicative damage and not flat, because that would make Electro and Pyro the same, which we don't want. There may be characters from different elements that have similar abilities like Ganyu and Amber's Flower and Bunny respectively, but the 7 elements have established themselves as unique entities with their own interactions and synergies. That's what I love the most about Genshin Impact. A lot of games have classes such as Warrior, Mage, Archer, and Rogue, but Genshin has elements and the different reactions they have together make the combat really entertaining. It's just a shame that they didn't get creative with Electro considering it's the most wildcard element, not just in this game but any other. With that said, I think we'll end it off here. I think I'm losing my voice. So what do you guys think of my proposed changes? Do you have something else in mind? If you do, let me know in the comments down below. For now, if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you hit that like button and subscribe. Check out my main channel Vars if you play League of Legends by any chance. I do discussion content on there as well. Aside from that, feel free to follow me on Twitter, join my Discord server, and check out my other videos if you haven't already. But until next time, thank you all so much for watching. I'm pretty sure by the time you see the next video, it will already be 2022, so Happy New Year's to everybody in advance, and I look forward to seeing you again soon for another year. Take care.